And here I've made some bone marrow butter, which is what it sounds like. It's roasted bone marrow blended into some butter. I like that on my steak. Just gonna spread that a little bit like that. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Chef Gone Carnivore. I am Chef Joe, and I'm trying to lose about 200 pounds. Doing carnivore, I've lost almost 40 so far, and yeah, I just wanted to do a video. We had quite a few people comment on one of my videos about cooking ribeyes, where I used a bone marrow butter to top the steak with. And I've had a few people ask for that recipe, so I decided to post a video showing how to make that bone marrow butter. You could either take it and actually make the butter that's in this recipe, or you can just cut short of when I actually do the butter and just take the beginning of the video and it'll teach you just how to roast bone marrow for eating on its own. Anyways, so I went ahead and bought some bones from the butcher. They are femur bones, and generally they're cut. I like the canoe cut bone marrow bones. It's a lot easier to get the marrow out. You can also get them cross-sectioned, so they're little like pieces like that, and those ones you kind of have to spoon out the marrow, but those work great too. But I like them canoe cut because then you can just scrape the marrow out of the bones, and they're really easy to roast. It's a little bit easier. So yeah, I got some of those marrow bones. I'm working with about 3.5 pounds of bones right now. It doesn't make a ton of marrow, but I like to put it in butter because it stretches the marrow a little bit more. I'm going to go ahead and show you how to make that bone marrow butter today, or just how to roast bone marrow if you're interested in that. So let's take a look. These bones have been soaking about 24, actually I did it overnight. I put them in last night. I put them cut side down in salt water and put some ice in there as well to keep the water real cold. The saltwater solution that I used was 8 cups of water to 2 tablespoons of salt. So if you looked in here, you can see that the water is kind of pink. And that's drawn out some of the blood and some of the impurities in the bone marrow. And that will just help with a cleaner taste on the bone marrow. You can soak them up to 24 hours or as little as 6 hours if you're short on time. If you're really short on time, you can just roast them without soaking them. I recommend soaking them, but you certainly can do it without soaking them, and there won't be anything wrong with them. They just will have a little funkier of a taste. If I were in a restaurant and serving these as a side dish or with toast or whatever, like they're usually served in a restaurant, I wouldn't want all this stuff on the bones. I'd have them nice and clean. Like you can see how this is a nice clean bone. I'd clean all of this off if I were serving it in the bone on a plate to somebody. However, I use these bones in stock, and so they're going to go in there and roast, and then I'm going to make stock with them. So I actually want this this meat on the bones because it'll help my stock have a little more flavor. But you're welcome to, if you want a nice clean presentation, you're welcome to just clean the rest of it so that the bone looks like that, nice and white and clean and beautiful. But I'm going to go ahead and drain these bones and then pat them dry with a paper towel, and then we'll be ready to roast them. Okay, so I've got those dried off and laid out here on just a sheet tray. The bone is just right on the sheet tray, and you want to put them cut side up. I'm just going to start the oven and set it to 425 degrees, and then we're going to bake them for 15 to 20 minutes. And I like to rotate the pan 180 degrees halfway through just to try to get it an even roast. All right, so while the oven is heating up, I just wanted to show you, if you weren't going to be mixing this into a butter and blending it all up and then being able to season it, if you just wanted to serve a side of bone marrow with a meal and just scoop it out with a spoon and eat it that way, or spread the bone marrow directly onto the steak rather than doing the butter route, You'd probably want to season these a little bit with some good salt. Now, you can also wait till after they're roasted and try a little bit and just kind of get an idea of how much salt you need, and then finish them with a fleur de sel after they're roasted. That's fine too. So I'm not doing these other ones because they already have some salt in them from the saltwater brine, and then I'm going to actually season the butter at the end if it's needed. If not, then I'll leave it as it is. But I just wanted to show you what it'd be like if you wanted to just eat the bone marrow and skip the butter part. Then you generally would want to season it a little bit before roasting it. So yeah, once this oven heats up, we'll go ahead and toss them in the oven for roasting. Now, while those are roasting, I'm going to go ahead and prepare the butter. I'm using Kerrygold salted butter, and this is an 8-ounce block. So this is the equivalent of two sticks of butter. So if you're not using a block like that, you can just get 2 of the 4-ounce sticks of butter and use those instead if you prefer. And so all I'm doing is I'm just going to dice these up into little nubs, because it'll make it easier. That'll just make it easier to blend in the food processor. All right, so I added the rest of that butter into the food processor. Now this is a small food processor. It's like a 2-cup, 16-ounce food processor or something like that. I generally like the small one for jobs like this where it's just a small amount I'm making. You can use a regular food processor. You could also blend it if you wanted to, and then when it was soft, and then cool it that way. That works fine too in a blender. I generally like the food processor, and I like to have the butter somewhat cold because it just mixes a little thicker, and then it's easier to take care of when it's done. But yeah, so the butter's all in here now, and the marrow is still roasting. And then once that's done, we'll add it. I'm just going to give this a little bit of a blend, just to make a little bit of room for the marrow. All right, that's looking pretty good. I'm not trying to necessarily get it smooth right now. I'm just trying to make some room for the marrow. And the softer the butter is, the easier to grind it. But then I like it kind of cold because it keeps it thick, and then it makes it easier to roll at the end, which I'll show you how to do. But basically, I'm good with that. I'm going to add the marrow to that, and then we'll take it from there. All right, so my timer just went off. That's going. I'm going to go ahead and rotate all that steam coming off. It smells really good. So I'm going to go ahead and rotate this 180 degrees. Those are roasting. Got another 7.5 minutes, and then I'll check them. And by then, the marrow should be nice and soft. If it's not, leave it in for a few more minutes after that. But we'll go ahead and wait till this alarm goes off, and then we'll check them. Yeah. Now what I want to check is tenderness. So I have a little kick tester here. And I want it to go through without any... I want it to go through without any resistance. Yep, those are tender. There's a nice deep pocket there. Goes right in. No problem. But you could use the tip of a knife or a thermometer or whatever just to check and make sure it's nice and soft. But you can also see, if you look, there's a lot of drippings. Can you see that down there? That have flowed out of these. That's all fat. And so I don't want to lose that. That's got a lot of good benefits, a lot of nutrition, and a lot of flavor. So we're going to pour that into the butter as well. But basically, I'm going to let these cool for 5 minutes is all. I just don't want to put them super hot right into the butter, or else it'll just melt it. So I'm going to let these cool a little bit, and then we'll start scooping them out. All right, so these have cooled for a couple of minutes. I just wanted to take a little bit of the heat off of them. Basically, all I'm doing here is I just want to dig out this bone marrow. All right, so I've got the meat scraped and added to the butter like that. And now, once these are cooled to the touch, I just want to pour off the fat that's in these bones. Now if you leave, scrape them as good as you can, but some of this on the end here that you see is attached pretty well, and it's hard to get off. That's okay, because I'm going to be using these bones for stock. So a little bit of that marrow in there will help the flavor of the stock. So I'm not worried about wasting some of it, but you want to get as much of it out as you can. And this one should shoot pretty good. There's a lot of fat in there. That's nice. All right. So these bones I'm gonna bag up and throw in the freezer to use when I'm ready to make stock. And then I'm gonna pour the rest of this fat in the pan into this butter. All right, so I've bagged up those bones, thrown them, and I'm gonna throw them in the freezer. There they are right there. But this guy here, I just want to make sure I use the rest of this fat and add it into my butter. I'll just let it drain as much as I can. That's nice. There we go. Happy about that. And then this guy, I'm going to go ahead and blend up. So that's kind of what we're looking for, nice and smooth. Now, if I were making this at the restaurant, I would add fresh herbs, a few cloves of roasted garlic, maybe some sauteed shallots. But I would want to flavor this up real nice. Maybe a little bit of lemon juice to cut through some of that fattiness. But since we're doing this carnivore, I just leave it just like it is. I'm going to taste a tiny bit of it and just make sure we don't need to add any salt. Now, I started with salted butter, so I'm pretty sure this will probably be where I want it. But since I added a bunch of fat to it, it'll probably cut down a little bit on how salty it tastes. So I might want to add a little bit of salt. But I'm just going to taste it and see if I need to add a touch of salt just to ramp up the flavor a little bit. All right, so I'm just gonna taste it here. Yeah, so the salt's okay. I'm gonna add a pinch. I just added a pinch of kosher salt. Just gonna give it a quick blitz. Just to mix it up a little bit. Now, since I already put this end in my mouth, I'm just going to use the handle. Yeah, that's good. I could add a little bit more salt if I wanted to, but since I'm going to be adding this generally to steaks that have already been seasoned on their own, I don't want this to add a lot of salt to the dish because that may take the steak too salty since I'm already seasoning the steak on its own. So I just want this to complement it. So I don't need to go super salty on this. You could if you wanted to, but since I'm generally adding this to something that's already been seasoned, I don't want this overly seasoned. So I think it's good right where it's at. So now you could take it just like this and put it in a bowl and then scoop it out with a spoon and add it to steak every time you wanted to use it. That's fine. I like to roll mine up in some plastic wrap in order to get the shape of a log. That way I can just slice a little slice of it off and keep it in the freezer, and it'll last a really long time. But it's easier to slice when it's in a log like that. But you're welcome just to take it just like this, put it in a dish or a bowl in your fridge, and then just scoop some out with a spoon when you want to use it and add it to steak. So if you want to go that route, you're done at this point. But if you want to actually roll it up into a log like I do, I'll show you how to do that. Oops. All right, so I've gone ahead and popped this in the fridge. I don't know if you can see, but it's nice and it's a little thicker now. I don't want it solid because then I won't be able to spread it on there, but I want it thick. I don't want it to be able to just drip off of the spatula when I pick it up. So I probably had it in there for about 10 minutes, but if yours is really soupy when you put it in the fridge, it may take a little bit longer. But you just want it kind of thick like this, you know, so it's not even falling off of the spoon, but it's still soft. I've taken about a foot of plastic wrap. Now I'm sure there are those of you who would not use plastic wrap because of not wanting plastic on your food. That is totally fine and understandable. In that case, you would just want to pop this in a dish and leave it in the fridge, and then when you want to top a steak, just use a spoon and scoop some out and either soften it first or pop it cold on a hot steak and let it melt that way. But I'm just going to show you how to roll it into a log so you can make slices of it as you need it. So I've got this cooled a little bit, and I'm just going to pop this right in the center of the plastic wrap. Then I'm going to take this and start to roll it, and then take this and put it over the top. But I'm just going to pinch the ends where the butter ends, and I'm just going to use the table to roll it. Okay, and then do it again. So it's tightening as I go. So now it's like a nice round log, and I'm pinching the end so the butter stays in there. And then all I'm going to do is take one end and just do a little overhand knot like that. And then on this one, I'm just going to re-tighten it now that this is holding. And then same thing here, I'm just going to tie it in an overhand knot like that. And then there's my thing of butter. It doesn't have to be perfect, especially if you're just using it at home. If you were going to actually be presenting it for a dinner or whatever, you might want to really like focus on getting it really nice and tight and round. But what I like to do with these is I'll actually keep it in the freezer and freeze the log. So this is one I made. It's a bone marrow butter that I already made. It's all in the log, and then as I'm ready to use it, you can see I've already been using it. I just leave it frozen and I just unwrap it. Like that. And then I just cut off a slice while it's frozen, or 2 or 3 or however much I need. I'll just slice it off, and then I'll recover it with the plastic. And then I like to put it in a freezer bag just to keep it from getting that kind of freezery taste that you get sometimes since all it is a piece of thin plastic. And then I just keep mine in the freezer and then just cut it as I need to. If you think you'll use yours within a month or 2, then by all means just keep it in the fridge. That's fine. It'll last that long in the fridge. But if you're just going to use it periodically for over the next year or something like that, then I just keep mine in the freezer, bust it out when I need to. And yeah, so that's how you do a bone marrow butter. And I'll just pop this in my freezer, and then I'll be able to use it when I want to. Now, another option you have if you want to avoid the plastic situation and you don't want to go through the trouble of actually rolling it and all that stuff, you can use butter molds. You can get these on Amazon or whatever. It's made out of silicone. And you just fill this up with your soft butter, and it actually molds it into a stick of butter. Now, I use these all the time, and I make lots of compound butters, which in restaurants, a lot of times this is a secret to that flavor you get. You know, when you go to your favorite restaurant and it's got this really good flavor in most of the dishes they make, a lot of times it's a compound butter that they've created that has the type of flavors that they want. I use compound butters a lot to add flavors to all sorts of dishes. And I've used this mold to make a couple here that I still have in my freezer if I ever have family over or whatever and want to use them. This is a green chili cotija cheese compound butter, already in the form of a stick. And this is a chipotle lime compound butter that I use. So you can use these molds to make all sorts of butters. Since I'm carnivore now, I'm not eating those because they have chilies in them and herbs. But you can make all sorts of compound butters that add a ton of flavor to what you're doing. So instead of rolling it like that, I could have put the butter in a mold like this and used it like that, but I figure not everyone has these. So I wanted to show you a way you could do it with what you probably already have in your kitchen, which is just a sheet of plastic wrap and rolling it that way. But ideally, you can just use like a butter mold. I think these were, it's $5 or whatever on Amazon. It's made of silicone. And then you just fill this up, pop it in your freezer. It'll freeze it in that way, pop them out, and then pop them in your fridge and you're ready to use them as you normally would butter. So this is an option for you too, if you want to use that instead. All right, so hopefully that video on making bone marrow compound butter helps those of you who are asking for it. You can make a compound butter flavored with almost anything. But it's a great way to add flavor to your carnivore meals. It just adds a little bit of variety, and with bone marrow, it's really healthy. It tastes good, and it adds a lot of fat to what you're eating, which is all a plus. So that's why I like to use bone marrow for carnivore butter. But it's really that simple. Just roast the bone marrow, blend it into some salted butter, and top your steak with it. Real easy. Anyways, hope you make it, and I hope you enjoy it. Let me know. All right, thank you. Bye.